Hello, Weekend Warriors. Welcome back to the workshop. Welcome to part one of a three-part video series where we're going to build a four-position or four-platen rotary screen press using my T-press design. Now, I know I've got one. I showed it to you. I showed you the design for it. But a friend of mine is having some issues and needs a screen press because he can't get to his equipment anymore. So he's going to get my old one. So I'm going to build a new one. And if I'm going to build for three, I may as well build for four. So there you go. So in this one, we're going to build the screen press itself, or at least the frame. We're going to build the part you see in red here, the frame, along with a new registration cap. Instead of using any wood on it, it's going to be all steel. I know steel's heavy and people say I over-design stuff, but if you can do it, you do it, right? Then the next one, we will build new platens along with platen clamps. And after that, we'll build the rotary portion. So we got our work cut out for us in 3 videos. So anyway, let me get to the metal. I'm going to be doing all kinds of welding here. I'm going to show you that you don't necessarily have to weld, so don't let the fact that I'm using a welder or I'm using any fancier tools deter you. Hacksaws still work fine. Angle grinders with cutoff wheels still work fine. It's just I've got some tools. I'm going to use my tools. So anyway, let's get to it, and then we'll start welding and we'll finish up and we'll have a screen press frame ready to go. So you hang on. Okay, before we get started, we may as well know what material we're going to use here. The press frame itself is made from about 37 inches of 1 1/4 inch square tubing. 16th inch is what I've used for most of them. If you can get 1/8 inch, you know, that'll work even better, or well, it'll be stronger anyway. But I haven't had any problem with 16th inch tubing, you know, 16th inch wall tubing. So it's a little bit less expensive. You can go with that. And you can see this is all the same square tubing. To weld it up, I use my 160 amp old Harbor Freight welder. So there we go. That's out of the way. Here's my new prototype registration cap. And this guy is made out of 1 inch cold rolled angle iron and 3/4 inch cold rolled angle iron. So the 1 inch is used in front, 3/4 is used in back. In between, there's 3/4 inch bar stock. Ignore the welds, they're horrible, and I might explain that in a little while. While you're welding it up to keep the spacing, I use 1/4 inch square stock. I just knocked a piece off this stick and it goes in between the 1 inch and 3/4 inch, and that holds your 1/4 inch spacing. So there you go. There's the metal that you need to cut. Let's get to cutting. All right, it's time to start cutting metal. We'll start with the registration caps and the angle irons involved there, plus some little pieces that are needed for the registration caps. And then we'll go on to the press frame. And then after that, well, I think it's going to be time to start welding. So stand by, here we go. All right, so I'm mostly done with the cutting material.
and I'm almost ready to weld. But before I do that, I need to sink some holes into my crossbar and my feet. Now on the crossbar, I need to drill some 3/8" holes to accept the riv nuts. They're going to mount the registration cap to the registration bar. On the feet, I need to drill some 1/4" holes so I can mount the press itself to my table or to my rotary. But before I do any of that, I need to mark the spot where I want to drill. Now, I've got them penciled in. If I try to use a center punch, I generally end up off target. I don't know if it's my eyes or I get in a hurry or what. So I'm going to use my drill press with a nail installed in the chuck, and that's going to mark my spot just like it would if I was using a punch. So let me just get started. Now, you'll notice here that I'm using my Shopsmith in drill press mode. I love my Shopsmiths. So, you know, I don't have 5 different independent tools. I have the one Shopsmith for doing everything. And as you saw when I was doing the cutting portion, I even used it as a disc grinder to flatten out the ends of all my pieces. So, I'm going to find the spot here, hold it down, and this is just going to dimple it like I was using a center punch. And it's kind of obvious, but I'll add that I did set the fence up so it's 5/8 away from the center of the bit, so I'm dead center on all the pieces of stock too. Okay, ready to drill. I actually started one already, but I caught myself. So I'm going to start with a smaller bit, drill a pilot hole, then I'll go up to the larger bits. All right, all the drilling for the T-presses is complete. My registration bar has got 3/8" holes drilled in it. It'll receive riv nuts, 1/4" riv nuts. So that's what will hold the registration cap in place when we're done welding everything up. So I'm gonna weld first, and I'll put the riv nuts in. And then the through mounting holes are drilled in the feet. So you see, oops, we got we'll be able to mount the feet up to whatever table we're going to attach to. That includes the rotary press. But before I start welding, let's take a look at an alternate method in case you don't want to learn to weld, you don't have a welder, you don't care about welding. You can always use rivets. Okay? Just plain old ordinary pop rivets. And let's make sure I got that one on camera this time. Yeah, there we go. So pop rivets. So what I have done is I've cut a piece of angle. 2 pieces actually, one for each side, and I drilled some 1/8" holes in it. And then I've got my platen arm. This is just scrap, by the way. Platen arm and a suitable substitute for a registration bar in my welding jig. So if I'm going to build multiple presses, like I'm going to in this video, or during this video, I don't have to one by one measure and tweak and adjust. I can just put them into the jig, make sure it's square, and weld away. I don't even have to clamp it in place, even though I do keep clamp on it on the back end here. And
Anyway, so what I'm doing here is I've got my left and my right. You might have seen the R earlier. Brackets. I'm going to just put those in place. Then I'm going to take a little clamp. I'm going to clamp them in place. I'm going to feel for them. And they feel pretty good to me. Then I'm going to take my 1/8 inch transfer punch that has seen the war. And I'm going to mark where the screws are going to go. Pardon me, mark where the rivets are going to go. Now I'll take it over to the drill press and I will drill 1/8 inch holes to match in my mock-up registration arm. So stand by just a second. Okay, back from the drill press. I have installed the rivets. Now all I have to do is set the rivets, and I do that with my pop rivet. Go in here. Okay, I got so excited after riveting, I forgot to turn the camera back on for the first couple of holes here. All right, so I got these guys riveted in place. Then I went ahead and clamped back up, and then I just did a Roger Ramjet drill session. I took my drill with the 1/8 inch bit, went in through the existing holes, and drilled it out. So now I'm ready for the next round of rivets. So it's just popping them in all the way around. And going back to the rivet gun. Now, I remember doing these rivets to be a lot easier on my hands, but you know, I might be getting a little bit older. Maybe. Okay, rivets are set. So now I can unclamp this guy. Back off my set screws a little bit. And out comes let me grab this. Out comes a square T-press. Well, or a reasonable facsimile thereof. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, you didn't see it the first time. It's because I was too busy patting myself on the back. Yeah, so square T-press. All right, so once again, this is not a project that you've got to have the most expensive tools in the world to use. Because you can see you can do the same thing with a couple of brackets and some pop rivets. It just takes a little bit more time is all. Now let's get down to the welding portion of the program. All right, I am finally getting near time to weld. I wanted to show you that I made some changes to the frame building jig. I got rid of the upstanding arms here that were supposedly holding this guy into place. It worked okay for doing the rivets, but when I tried to repeat it, it just didn't square up very well at all for the welding. So I got rid of those upstanding pieces and I created this little guy here. And while I was at it, I also put a couple of locks in. So here, let me get rid of the platen arm. There is my new alignment jig that goes along with the overall jig. And then there's two lock assemblies that will press the registration bar back up against the rear stop. And even if the jig is in place, once they lock up, they push it, everything, the registration bar and the lock, flat up against the stop in the back. So this is actually... All right, now getting to use this guy. before I put them in place, I want to show you that I've got a little black mark here that's actually corresponding to a notch that I put into the back of the bar. So that is my center notch. So drop that back down into the frame. On my platen arm, you probably can't see it, but right here there is a little notch that is dead center that I cut over on the bandsaw. I put a little fence on the bandsaw and just touch this guy up to cut that notch. Now with the jig in place, I can lock the jig up, which will also lock up the registration arm against the, well, I don't want to lock the jig all the way up because I need to be able to move it now. Now I'll put this guy into place and find my mark again. And I will line the mark, and I got to get some closer up glasses than those. There we go. I will align the two notches, guaranteeing that my arm is centered, and that is, my platen arm is centered to my registration bar. And now I will move my my platen arm back until it is flush with the back side, and to make sure it's flush with the back side, I got a little piece of angle here that you'll recognize from the riveting video. I already cut those away. So push that there, I'll push that up against there, and now we're ready to clamp this piece up. So clamp him up a bit. We're flush, we're square, we are locked into place, we're ready to go. Now I can add another clamp if I want to the back here, and I'll pull this backwards, just to guarantee good contact on my welding surfaces, even though I know I've got good contact already. But it can't hurt just to be sure. Here's my torch, and here we go. Oh, I'm a little hot. I just blew a hole through, but that's okay. I can go down a little bit. Yeah, just had to go down a little bit in the heat. Now, once again, I'm a much better grinder than I am a welder. All right, it's time for feet, but before I do that, I want to show you some more additions that I made to the press here. I'm going to change glasses here real quick. When I started this build, I made myself a T-template, this size of a T-press. So this is 1 1/4 inches, 1 1/4 inches, perfect right angles. I cut this on my laser, right? And when I set it up 10 inches across, squared up these two blocks on the end, and I drew an outline. Well, what I've done in between welding up the platen arm to the registration bar and now is I added 2 other strips that are waste from my laser. So I know the edges are cut nice and straight. And I put those in place, aligned to the lines that I drew around my template. So I know they're nice and straight, and I know that they're on center. And just to be sure that when I put my press in, it's on center, I've got a center line drawn here on my backstop. So I'll go ahead and put that away. I might need it someday. And now to do this portion, you're going to turn the T-press right side up. You're going to bring it all the way back to the backstop. And I see that my notch that's now on the top here of the platen arm is aligned. And I'll get my little piece of angle iron that I use to check the alignment of such things. Oh, it's on my hat, already on my eyes. All right, and I see that they are aligned center to center, so that's a good thing. All right, so this is in place. This is as far back as it's going to go. It's as far back as I want it to go, because with it up against the backstop, I can then put my feet in place. So up against the side bracket there, and the other one up against this side bracket over here. And I will go ahead and make sure, using my piece of angle iron again, I'll make sure that they are flush with the back side of the jig, which they are. And I just have to clamp them up. So welding is done. As you see, it's together. I've got my welds on the inside. They're not pretty. They're even uglier than I was hoping for because I blew through a couple of times. The thickness of this square tubing is not quite consistent. I never expected it to be. But it surprised me when it blew through on the setting that I've got on the welder. Not only is it tight and it's going to work out for me just great, it's also square, which was the whole point of using the jig. So I've got a nice square unit to work with here. Now, the only thing I need to do is put in the mounts, the mounting riv nuts for the cap, and then of course we still have to make the registration cap. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare the rib nuts. I'll just drop 3 in just so I know I've got them. Now I've included a center hole, which I don't normally do, and that is so if I shift the registration arm way out, I've got just a second securing point if I get it past the other edge. So now I'm going to get hold of my setting tool here. I will insert it. I'll do a quick check on them. Make sure I didn't pull any threads out or anything like that. And those are going to work great. Okay, so the T-press frame is done. Onto the registration cap. Now, you watched me cut out, or you saw footage of me cutting out angles and the square tubing and all that. So I don't think it's necessary to rehash going to the saw and doing that. So next time I join you, I'll be ready to weld. And I think I'll try my lower power welder that I did a conversion on. Okay, what I've got clamped up here is the registration cap, and it's real simple. It's a piece of 3/4 inch angle iron, 3 pieces of 3/4 inch bar stock, 3/4 by 1/8 inch bar stock, cut to 1.7 inches. Then a piece of 1 inch angle, and then in between I've got these 1/4 inch square stock spacers to give it the exact spacing that I want it to be when I'm done. What I'm using here is my Harbor Freight 90 amp wire flux wire welder. And this comes as an AC welder. I've converted it to a DC welder so we don't get as much splash and crap that we were getting with the original version of it. They've since gone to a 125 amp DC titanium welder, is what their brand. It's still worth the $170 that you're paying for it. So anyway, this is my DC conversion. Lots of videos on the internet how to do this conversion if you happen to get one of these welders. So I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to use it. So some quick spot welds, make sure our spacing is still good, and then I'll finish it off camera. So here we go. Now we're ready for the X offset bracket. Once again, this is just a piece of the same 1-inch angle iron that I cut off over there on the metal bandsaw. I've used my speed square to set up my square to the registration cap. I've got it clamped in place. Now this guy's just going to get a few spot welds. I'm not going to try to do a full weld on it because I'm remembering I suck at welding. I'm a much better grinder than I am a welder. And as a matter of fact, that might have been an insult to grinders out there. So, like I said, just a couple spot welds. But my other one's broke, so this is the one I got to use. All right, I'll finish this off and get back to you. All right, registration cap is done. It's all metal. The welds aren't pretty because I had a feed problem with my smaller welder. The conversion I did it worked great, but the feed speed was just off for some reason. So that's something I got to work on. But all in all, here's the T-Press Mark III. The welds are strong. It's not going to go anywhere. If I can break these welds screen printing, my technique is truly screwed up. Okay, so this is the first of the 3. I've still got to make the brackets for the platen, and then I still have to make the rotary table to go with the new presses that I'm working on. But you see, you can do this. You don't need all the tools that I used. I showed you an alternative, and yeah, it's a great project. And if you enjoy screen printing, it's a great press. So I will see you next time. Until then, thanks for letting me into your shop. Thanks for letting me be a part of your toolbox. And I'll see you when I see you. Bye.